this wasn't what you wanted, was it? Was it? This isn't what you wanted. This isn't what you tell me what our time went, and if it was time well spent. Just don't let me fall asleep, feeling empty again. 'Cause I fear I might break, and I fear I can't take it. Tonight I'll lie awake, feeling empty. I can feel the pressure, it's getting closer now. We're better off without you. I can feel the pressure, it's getting closer now. We're better off without you. Now that I'm losing hope, and there's nothing else to show for all of the days that we spent carried away from home. Some things I'll never know, and I had to let them go. I'm sitting all alone, feeling empty. I can feel the pressure, it's getting closer now. We're better off without you. I can feel the pressure, it's getting closer now. We're some things I'll never know, and I had to let them go. Some things I'll never know, and I had to let them go. But I'm sitting all alone, feeling empty. I can feel the pressure, it's getting closer now. We're better off without you. Feel the pressure, it's getting closer now. You're better off without me.
Let's get ready to RPG!
RPG! RPG! RPG! RPG!
Hello, everyone, and good evening. Welcome to the demonetized stream. That was supposed to be something else, but instead Spotify was playing the last album I was listening to, which was All We Know Is Falling by Paramore, their first album. Sometimes, that's all right. YouTube wins again. Welcome. Hello, everyone. Tonight is going to be a little bit more of a chill stream. Kendall, please do not worry about that. The only thing that will get stolen from me is the $3 or $5 that this video makes off of YouTube ad revenue. If anybody wants to tip or super chat me, I still get all that. Super chats, YouTube gets their cut anyways. But there's no, the ad revenue is only what will get stolen by some faceless record company somewhere. And that's only going to be a couple of bucks because nobody is going to watch this video except for you. And that makes you special. So welcome to the Knights of Last Call. Please like and subscribe. But don't watch. You don't have to watch this video though, because I'm not making any money off of it. Anyways, love Paramore. Disappointed in their last album. That's a whole other story. So tonight is again a pretty laid back, easygoing stream. And this one I threw out to the patrons. I honestly has been really busy at work this week and trying to get ready, trying to get everything done before I sort of go into the.
Tipped $5 music fee.
Thank you. Thank you, Hoyt. You covered the delta that we would have made off of ad revenue. So thank you. You're the real MVP. Thank you so much. So, oh, by the way, we're being extra childish tonight. Again, you all have been so amazing and so supportive. Next week is Origins, a gaming convention here in the United States, probably like the third or fourth largest gaming convention in the United States, give or take. But it's in my own backyard. It's in Columbus, which is just a few hours away from me. So me and Bob and Aaron are all going to be driving down there next week. So next Thursday's stream should be from live from Columbus with the boys and any other patrons or guests who manage to stop by or whatever. So that'll be pretty fun. That'll be really exciting. Really look forward to that. And so tonight, again, the patrons have been so incredibly amazing. Everyone's been so supportive and amazing. So tonight's goals are, like the child that I am, you are awesome for $6. And thank you for your support for $9. But anyways, tonight, I put up to my patrons what they wanted us to talk about. And the patrons showed their support and they showed their love. And the topic that won was this idea of metagaming. Now, we've covered metagaming before. We covered metagaming back in, it was probably about 2 years ago, in one of our early nightlife videos that we did on the channel. But tonight, and that's a great video, and you should definitely go and check that out. But tonight, I kind of want to go a little bit deeper and explore the reason why people might metagame, or the reason why people might think that metagaming is bad, or is good. What are the pros and what are the cons to metagaming, and how does that change or differ from game system to game system, from game group to game group? One thing that I always say on this channel is you really want to make sure that you understand your why, your reason why. Why am I making this house rule? Why are we choosing this system over that system? Why are we metagaming? Why are we not metagaming? What are sort of the motivations so that we can understand if the behaviors that we are taking align with what we are expecting to get out of the game or get out of the whatever process that we are going through. So that's kind of where we're going to be at metagaming. We'll probably end up at the whiteboard, as would be wont to do, because that kind of sort of lends itself well to it. So again, thank you for everybody for showing up. if you have any questions, put them in the chat. Feel free to throw your support through a super chat or a tip. But if you have a question, then I will try to answer it in the chat as well. Quick shout out. We've got some cool people here tonight. We've got Galarian in Depth saying good morning from the other side of the world, rocking their awesome red loyalty badge. Dirt Guyver, who is in the stream tonight. Dirt is going to be joining us here in a few weeks for our new Root game. Looking really forward to that. Get a chance to play with that guy. It's been a while. It'll be awesome. Pillsbury's here. Rule of Cool. Frostjack. Serious Whimsy. Hello. Damian Williams. I only use stock music. Ordinarily, that is true. But tonight, oops, we messed up. Thanks for coming out and supporting us. Bam Curtain Bear 13. Hello to you as well. Square Peg. KC is in the house. Which one? Well, Metagaming one. Jackal-Torn Moons is here. Let's see. Priest is here. Kendall Carson's here. King Fate 20. Welcome back. John is 3 minutes late, but he's here now. Oh, Gabe is here. Hello, Gabe. It's been a while, I think. Jackal-Torn Moons with a $5 super chat asks Crush, Crush, Crush versus Ain't It Fun? Crush, 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 of course, arguably the third most famous Paramore song off of their sophomore album, Riot. Most people, of course, know Misery Business, which is arguably their biggest album or biggest song. But Ain't It Fun won a Grammy. That being said, Ain't It Fun was from the fourth self-titled Paramore album, and it was probably like the last album of theirs that I thought was truly great. That being said, Crush, Crush, Crush has never been one that I've gone really hard on. And so even though I love Riot, it's, that and All We Know Is Falling are my favorite albums, I'm actually going to give the nod to Ain't It Fun. I know it's poppy. I know it's the new direction. I never wanted Paramore to be the same. I just wanted them to be good. And their last albums, particularly their last album, have just not been good. There's some all right tracks from After Laughter, but this is why. This is not why. Anyways. Good morning, Beowulf. Welcome. Ken, hello to you as well. Nice to see you. Glad to have you here. Hoyrit coming in says, one thing I like when the rules and settings of the game make it so that the player and the characters are aligned and there's no need or desire
Anonymous tipped $25.
for metagaming. All right. Anonymous tipped $25. Anonymous, I don't know if you meant to throw your name on there, but if you want to claim credit for that tip, you're welcome to do it. Otherwise, thank you so much. That's very nice of you. Great role-playing Debbie. Massive super chat. My stance is due to limits on what the player knows, that metagaming is arguably the only way to close the gap as well as a needed oil to the game, because the character is dealing with a loot-stealing PC, but the player is dealing with the DM's 9-year-old kid. So this is sort of an interesting idea that I want to talk about tonight, for sure. And I think there's a lot to unpack here from what Great Role Playing Debbie is saying. So let's start by coming into this idea of metagaming and defining what metagaming is, right? We always start with the definition here. And I'd love to hear from you all, too, what your thoughts are. For me, right, metagaming is the idea that you are making a decision inside of your role-playing game because, or rather, I should even take a step back. You are making a decision inside of a game because of information that you possess from outside of the game. All right. So, for example, if I was going to a Magic the Gathering tournament, the purpose of a Magic the Gathering game or tournament is to decide who is the best Magic the Gathering player. Can my deck of cards and my play beat you and your deck of cards and your play? But if I know that right now, very fast aggro decks are the everyone's loving those, and I build a deck specifically designed to combat that so-called meta, that is me metagaming Magic the Gathering. So metagaming on one part is the idea of trying to use information from outside of the game to help you do better or perform better inside of the game. So that brings us back to role-playing games, where, on paper at least, there is no winning or losing per se. So metagaming is the idea that you, as a player, are taking information that exists outside of the sphere of the game world and using it to influence your decision. Now, here's the problem. I think a lot of people hear metagaming, and what they think of is, okay, the knowledge that they're thinking about is the knowledge of, like, you know, a monster's weakness, a monster's resistance. And me, the player, knows it, but would my PC know it? And then my character is, you know, casting a bunch of acid spells because Derek knows that this troll is weak to acid and it will shut down the regeneration. So I think people automatically have this knee-jerk reaction to think that metagaming is synonymous with cheating. And there's an interesting idea to this that I kind of want to talk about, which is where this idea that metagaming equals cheating came from. And I know last Tuesday we talked about the fighter, we talked about original D&D, and a patron of ours, Ben, has been doing a deep dive of first edition AD&D. And I don't think that this was necessarily intended, but maybe it was a little bit. But if you go back to the roots of D&D, there was this language presented. Like, I'll give you a great example. In the original days of D&D, you were a persona non grata if you were a player who had read the Dungeon Master Guide or the Monster Manual. If you found out that a player had bought the Monster Manual, like, that person would be banished or exiled from all gaming groups, you know, in your city because they had broken this sacred covenant. So this original idea that sort of knowing information that you shouldn't know sort of was born in the first edition era. But I think, like all things, that information kind of got lost in translation, because Gary Gygax, when he was writing that, was not necessarily upset that you, the player, possess knowledge that your PC didn't gain. No. What upset Gary is that the way you obtained that knowledge was by just reading it in a book. Gary would have been the first to tell you that he thought there was a skill to playing Dungeons and Dragons that went beyond. When we think of, if you say someone is good at role playing, right? If you say someone's a good role player, where does your mind go? Nowadays, it certainly goes to one place. That means they should be on Critical Role. They're a good actor, is what you're really saying. But Gary and D&D originally had this concept that D&D, like the name implies, was a game. And just like any other game, you're going to have people and players who are better at the game and players that are not as good at the game. But if that doesn't mean role-playing really well and really having a great character voice, what does it mean? Damien says, metagaming wasn't a problem before knowledge skills. I don't know that that is a 100% true, because again, I think we are forgetting here what metagaming really means, right? So, I mean, knowledge skills are probably one of the biggest and baddest ones, but I'll point out through sort of reducto ad absurdum, so I understand it's not the most compelling argument, but you'll see why that concept doesn't even really make any sense. A long story short, if you say, okay, well, my character is going to do this thing, and someone says, well, how does your character know to do that? And then the response is, how does my character know how to do anything? Right? How does my character know how to does my character know how to tie their shoes? I know how to tie my shoe. Does my character know how to tie my shoes? And we go, well, we assume that your character knows how to tie their shoes. Okay, so what information is assumed and what information isn't assumed? My character is an adventurer, a high-level adventurer, in a world where trolls aren't really all that rare. They wouldn't know anything about trolls at all. I mean, they seem to know how other things work. They know what spells are. Or let's go even a more ridiculous step. The GM says, no, you're right. Make a recall knowledge check. Who's that person? Make a recall knowledge check. It's your mother. Oh, good. Okay. I wasn't sure if I knew who that was, because how would I know what my PC knows? So like, if you take that logic and reasoning, it gets really absurd really, really, really quickly. Dreadon says, I nearly got kicked from my group back in the day for reading my newly bought monster manual at the table. That is right. That is banishment worthy. So, and KC, I think you said an important thing here too. Hey, Shadram, good to see you. I feel like there are tiers to metagaming, I think is what he meant to say. I feel like there are tiers to metagaming. Knowing to use fire on trolls because you faced one before, fine. Reading ahead in the AP, fuck you. So let's put something on this too, which is there's a difference between metagaming and cheating. Okay, that's sort of the line, right, between metagaming and cheating. And it maybe for some people it can be kind of a gray line, but clearly, reading the adventure that you're playing in and reading ahead so that you know how to solve every problem and deal with everything, that's just cheating. That's not metagaming. So anyways, going back to what I was saying before, which is Gary thought that there was a skill to playing Dungeons and Dragons. In fact, one of the things that he talked about, and Ben, again, if you're in the Discord, go over to the Legacy D&D forums. There's like a 6 or 7 part deep dive into the first edition Dungeon Master Guide. That's pretty compelling. But Gary had this vision of sort of tournament D&D, right? That people would play their characters the way that Magic the Gathering players play their decks. They would build their characters and bring them to the tournament and play them. This is one of the reasons why Gary, by the way, was so focused on making AD&D to be this sort of like one rule, one law to rule them all, because he was like, well, look, if people are going to be bringing their characters, it's kind of like an early version, if you will, of the Pathfinder Society, where Gary's like, look, if people are going to be bringing their characters to these tournaments, then I want to make sure that their characters are quote unquote legitimate. That probably was always fairly flawed, because like, how do you know if somebody just didn't, their DM wasn't in on it? But there was this like sacred, brotherhood or sisterhood of dungeon masters that it was like, you would never betray the screen, I guess. So anyways, Gary wanted you to obtain that knowledge, but he didn't want you to do it by just reading it out of a book. He wanted you to experience it. And growing up, like there are these legendary people that I played with. Aaron is one of them, where, new people would join the game and they would just be like in awe of watching this person play Dungeons and Dragons. And I'm not talking about the role playing. I'm talking about things like the player going, this doesn't feel right. I feel like there's a trap here, or something's off. I don't know. Let's detect for magic. I feel like there's something wrong here. Or, you know what? I'm thinking that could be a mimic. And, some new player goes, well, what's a mimic? And the other player goes, oh, yeah, let me tell you about mimics, right? And there's this idea of like this sort of passed on knowledge, this sort of earned knowledge that sort of builds up over years and years and years of playing. So you got better at the game through experience, and not like experience points, but like, I guess you could say in a certain way, your character, your PC was leveling up at the same time that you as a player were leveling up. You were getting better at D&D. And you were becoming more of a skilled player. And you just, and I remember years ago, during AD&D 2nd edition, they came out with this box set. I don't remember the name of it, but it had a CD in it, which had like an example of play, which wasn't too horrible. And there's a shaft, and the part, these are all new people playing D&D for the first time. And the one of the characters is climbs down. They're like, oh, my character's really strong. And like makes a check, and the GM says, okay, you climb down, and about halfway down the chute, it goes all the way down another 100 feet, and it ends in a pool full of alligators. But halfway down the shaft, there's a side passage that you think you can climb into. So, the fighter or whatever climbs halfway down and climbs into the shaft. Then the next character goes, and it's like a rogue, and he rolls really badly, and he falls, and the GM says, oh, the rogue is falling, quick, what does anybody do? And the warrior goes, what can I do? He's like, what would you do? He's like, I reach out and grab him. And he goes, okay, make a strength check. And he does, and he grabs the rogue, and the rogue's dangling, and everyone's like going, ooh, it's a little overdone. Then the third character says, you know what? I'm going to wrap a rope around me before I go down. I'm going to tie it off up here, and I'm going to measure the distance so that it's exactly as far as I need to go down. And I'm not really going to climb down. I'm just going to kind of sort of shimmy, rappel, and whatever. And fails the climb check. The GM's like, oh, you're falling. And everyone's like, aha. And then he's like, but then the rope stops you, and you're hanging outside of the entrance to the tunnel. And everyone's like, oh, that was awesome. That was awesome. And then the rogue character who had fallen and almost died says, well, that's not fair. Why didn't he almost die? And the GM says, like, almost as if like learn to play noob is like, he had a better idea than you did. And that's what this game's all about. And so like, I remember hearing this, at the time I thought I was this very experienced role player, but I was probably only playing the game for like 5 years, 3, 4, 5 years. But I remember hearing that and being like, yeah, like, there are people who are good at this game. Now, what good at the game means has changed a lot over the years. Before, it meant who was the player who could get you through a dungeon and who could smell out treasure and traps and, knew where the GM was going to be hiding the good loot and could tell if a door was a mimic or not. Nowadays, we tend to think of, that people who are good at the game, especially in Pathfinder 2, as being someone who knows how to make a sick combat build, right? So part of that is just where the shift has come in to the game. Right, Hassel. Back in the day, the good player's toolbox was things like poles and hand mirrors and using chalk to mark walls so you didn't get lost. Nowadays, we would say, oh, they took double slice. Their rogue took gang up, opportune backstab, and preparation. Oh, okay. They're a real legit player, right? And that's because that's what's important to the game. That's what's dangerous to the game. That's what's sort of what the game is kind of about. So metagaming essentially is the first thing we have to ask ourselves is metagaming, and by the way, John had a super chat here. He says, before we get any further, I'd like to challenge the premise that metagaming is actually a problem. It's worth thinking about at least. And John, I think on that, let's go to the whiteboard here, because one thing that I want to sort of discuss, or at least think about, is this idea that we typically think of metagaming as sort of the player, right, imparting knowledge or imparting decisions into the player character that they play, right? That's what most people think of metagaming, all right? Everything from, oh, what this character, what this monster's weakness is, what spells this creature has, or, whatever. We think about it from that perspective. And there's an idea, or at least a sort of, I don't know if it's a flawed idea, right? But there's this idea that this might be bad, right? We don't know. But there's another type of metagaming, which is the player to, I'm going to say the DM or the GM. Okay? Maybe another way to think of it is to the adventure. See, one of the other ways that you metagame is by, and I'm going to postulate that, that generally speaking, people might even think that this is good, right? which is to say, when we're playing a campaign, we accept the fact that the dungeon master is not capable of generating anything out of their back pocket, right? There's certain limitations. If you're playing on an adventure and you come and you are, the classic scenario where like the hook of the adventure is clearly you need to go to the haunted house and explore it. And you go, okay, I'm going to, I'm going to go to the haunted house. Is that what your PC would do? No, maybe not. But I understand that we're actually playing a role-playing game. And I understand that this isn't real. This isn't just the real world, right? We are playing a game. And because I am aware that we're playing a game, I am going to make a decision with my character that is going to make the game move forward. It's going to make the game proceed in the direction that it needs to go, right? Classic scenario is like, well, and again, we know that this is a problem because we see it bitched about on Reddit threads all the time, right? Which is, well, it's what my character would do, right? I do some asshole thing, but it's what my character would do. That is an example of where not metagaming is causing you problems. Because the fact of the matter is, maybe maybe you should never have built that character like that in the first place, because you should have been aware that your character was going to be part of an adventuring group and your character was going to be part of a AP that was going to go exploring portals across Galarian or whatever the case may be. Your job is to bring your character into those events. And the reason why you're doing that is because you, the player, the person sitting at the table, knows that you're playing in an AP or you're playing an adventure or you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, right? So I don't think that metagaming is necessarily bad. In fact, I think that metagaming can be really, really good. Furthermore, let's take this a step further, right? We're talking about, making decisions or playing in knowledge, but imagine the scenarios where, as a player, you make a decision because it'll make the game better, right? Now, we've talked about this before, so I'm going to bring it back up. Because it makes the game better. And what does that mean? It means, better can mean a lot of different things, but one of the things that it typically can mean is it makes more sense, it's more exciting, it's more fun for the people at the table, it's more logically consistent, right? And one of the things that we talked about, Damian Williams, $5 super chat, says they came from, which is a new RPG, embraces metagaming. It gives you mechanical ways to use your meta knowledge for fun results, making the killer's axe fall off head, fall off, etc. I don't understand that last line, Damien. It's interesting to mechanicize metagaming. There's certain elements of that I do in Powered by the Apocalypse, so it'd be interesting to understand exactly what that means. But I don't understand that last part, making the killer's axe head fall off. So we've talked about this on this channel before, but we talked about the different modes or styles that a player could be, right? So there's these ideas of player styles. Okay. And on one hand, you have the actor, you have the author, and you have the director. Now, oh, okay, I got it. Okay, save. I got it. Jonka says, it's what my PC would do. Make a better PC then. Yeah, I'll be the first one to say that is just a problem with your PC here. So, we've talked about these before and how these relate to and I'm going to make a hot take here. So, an actor as a player is fundamentally motivated, okay, by basically what would my PC do, right? What would my PC do? Okay? They are not thinking about the game. Now, an author is going to say, all right, I know what I need my PC to do, right? So what would motivate my PC to do that, right? How could I know that because we're playing a game, okay, because I'm writing a book, all right, because we're playing an adventure path, I know that my PC needs to want to go to this next part of the adventure. Now, it's my job as a player to get my PC to that next part of the adventure, to that next level of the dungeon. It is my job as a player to not to faithfully portray the character. It's my job to motivate said character so that that character takes actions which will advance our story, the game, the narrative, the plots, whatever is going on in your game. So the author is concerned with, motivating their PC. And then once they find out what that motivation is, right, the PC will perform the action. So the skill or the challenge here is the author is kind of thinking not just about the character himself, but thinking about the gaming. Now, this is sort of, stage one of metagaming, right? Because you're making a decision based off of what's going to be the best for the game. But when I say it like that, doesn't that sound like a really good thing? Hey, Save Versus coming in with a $10 super chat. Thanks, everybody. I think everybody probably goes through this phase, but the method actor role player is a hindrance to the overall game. Forces the GM to input them into the action instead of the other way around. All right, Save Versus is coming out with a hot take, and I'm going to say I actually agree with them. Now, Gid is in the channel. Gid knows that I love and respect him, but Gid and I don't always see eye to eye, and part of the reason is because Gid is a self-confessed actor, okay? And I actually completely agree with Save Versus. I think that being an actor in a role-playing game is selfish. I think that being an actor in a role-playing game is being stubborn, pig-headed, and ultimately unproductive to the game's overall procedure. Now, of course, if you have an entire group of people who only want to play their characters, that's fine. I argue, though, that is not a role-playing game, right? So it might be a fun activity. It might be something that even resembles a game, but I don't really think it is what we would consider to be a role-playing game. Again, I do think the term role-playing game is very, very bad because in modern day context, it has a lot of weight to it. That I would not say that's called a movie, John. Actually, it's worse than a movie, John. It's worse than a movie because in theory, a movie is written by a screenwriter and the script is written in such a way as to, have rising action and have tension and have stakes, right? And produce an outcome that is going to be exciting. So I would argue that a movie is far better than that. An actor is just, playing real life. Now, to be clear, and let me be clear here, if this is what everybody signed up for, okay? If everybody signed up to sit around and play make-believe, then you're doing it right. You're doing it better than anybody else possibly could. In fact, I would argue there's no game in your game to metagame. You're just kind of, improvising, shooting the shit, talking, being fun. In fact, we have in our Northern Reaches mega game, this just came out. Well, Northern Reaches just launched this week. It feels like it's already been out for months. We introduced a new channel. So Northern Reaches is about 80, 90 players, but we introduced a new channel where people can basically talk in character. And using a bot, we track how much they talk. And as they say more things, they gain experience points. That's right. Your character literally can level up by role-playing, by chatting and talking in character, right? That element of that game, which is going on in that channel, is fantastic and fine because everybody who's in that channel is there for the same reason. But if you were to take that idea and just put it into a normal game session where everybody's trying to, stop the bad guy, explore the dungeon, get the treasure, save the prince. If you do that and you're suddenly sitting here wanting to chew the scenery and just talk about, about what how your character feels about scrambled eggs, then I would argue that that you are being an inconsiderate player and you are being a problematic player. So an author is, again, primarily concerned with their PC and their role and their responsibility to that. And then lastly, sort of metagaming tier 2 is this idea of the director stance, where your primary goal is the narrative. Okay. So this is the character that goes, oh, wouldn't it be really like out loud? Wouldn't it be really awesome if you betrayed us right now and just totally screwed us over? Like that would be crazy, right? It kind of makes sense. Like, remember that thing that we were talking about last session? Like, what if that really bothered you? And like, you decide that this is the moment that you're going to betray us and you're going to, right? At this point, you're not even really thinking about your PC as an entity. You're thinking about the whole game. You're thinking about your character, other people's characters, the NPCs, the world around you, right? You're a very active participant in your game. I will be the first to admit that D20 games make being a director pretty difficult, right? Because they don't really give you a lot of mechanics or tools to do these things. Whereas a game like Fate or Powered by the Apocalypse, even Blades in the Dark, have a lot more tools at your disposal in order to sort of promote this directorship. Now, I again firmly and fully believe that in a standard traditional role-playing game, I think that being an actor is problematic. I think not metagaming is a problem. I think that metagaming means more than just building an awesome PC or knowing that trolls are weak to fire and acid. Metagaming means you are playing the game with respecting the fact that you are playing with other people, that you are trying to accomplish a goal, that you are trying to push your story forward. You're trying to accomplish your ends. Now, the other thing is too, which I'm also going to call out here. I'm going to dispute this here, which is say a lot of people say, I firmly believe to a certain extent is that you're always metagaming. Even when people say, it's what my character would do. Really? How do you know that? Right? How do you know what your character would do? You are introducing, whether you want to admit it or not, okay, you are playing out you through your character, right? If you were truly not going to have any sort of metagaming, you would have to be like, someone asked this in Patreon earlier today. It's like, okay, we're playing Pathfinder 2 and there's a monster right here. And then, my fellow PC is over here. And then my character, my PC is over here. And it's like, oh, you should go in and flank. And then I go, would my character know that they should flank or not? Well, they're only int 8. I don't know that my character would flank or not. You're actually metagaming right then because you're making a presumption of information about your character. What you should do, if you really didn't want to metagame at all, is you should be like, hey, every round, I'm going to make an int check. Okay. And the result of that intelligence check is going to represent how intelligently my character plays this turn. Because when you're playing your PC, you're playing your PC. There's no way that you can get around that. There's no option. There's no way that you can take yourself fully out of that or not. And so I think that to a certain extent, you're always metagaming. You're always metagaming. Yeah, exactly, Gabriel. Nat 1 panics, does nothing. It's very convenient, isn't it? It's very convenient that if you are an actor and you're like, what would my PC do? It's very convenient that your PC always does exactly what you want them to do. And usually people who like the actor style are typically the people who are really, really like vomit about ideas like, what if an NPC's diplomacy check could affect your character, right? I actually think that if you were truly an actor, that you would welcome those mechanics, right? I think that that you would be like, oh yeah, that's great. This is like an actor showing up to, and the reason why, by the way, I say this is because in movies, when we think of actors, the actors don't write their scripts, right? Someone else is telling them how to play their character. Sure, they're going to put their own little spin on it, and sometimes they might improvise. But an actor doesn't get to make that decision, right? Someone else did, a screenwriter. So this is a little bit like when someone says that they're an actor, it's a little convenient when they're both the actor and the screenwriter, right? It's like you are getting to write the script for your own character. So it's kind of disingenuous for you to say that you're doing what your PC would do. Whereas, as I was saying before, if we take a game like Avatar Legends, and Avatar Legends being a sort of a modern condition-based post Monster Hearts Powered by the Apocalypse game out of Magpie, you have these different statuses that your character can have. And these are emotional statuses, right? Your character could be angry. And there are mechanics in the game that will assign angry to your character. And when that happens, right, it does have a mechanical effect. It says you get a -2 penalty to try to comfort and guide somebody. Because, yeah, you're pissed off. How would you wouldn't probably be very good at comforting or guiding anybody. But I would say that this is also what would make an actor stand up and be thrilled. Because this is like an actor playing in a role who comes to set one day and boom, they give you a script and you go, oh shit. Oh man, what is my character going to do today? Oh, that my character is going to be the bad guy today. He's going to show a side of him that he's never shown before. Wow, this is going to be really fun for me to have this challenge. I watch a lot of actor interviews. I love watching Hot Ones with Sean Evans, and he's got a lot of actors on there. And, you hear actors talk about they love the challenge of acting. They love the, the difficulty, the mental exercise of acting, right? And I think that mechanics like Avatar Legends or, any number like Pendragon, which is not a game I'm super familiar with, but any of these other games where your character can be, modified by the game mechanics. And then the challenge is to you as a player, hey, play this. Now you have to act, because acting is when you're doing what you don't want. You want something else. I, the player, want this. But my PC demands that they act or behave this way. So there's a tension there. And that's where the skill and the maturity and the fun and the challenge come in, which is, hey, it is my job, it is my duty to portray this character accurately. That is what I really think acting should be. That is what I really think that people should embrace. I would argue, because we didn't talk about this, but this is continuing on with my hot take. There is a subsection, okay, of actor and kind of author, which, if you've watched our channel, you know where I'm going to go with this, that is called the sort of the fourth style, which is the pawn, which is the idea that your PC is just a character in an MMO for you. You're just moving them around. They say what you want them to say. They do what you want them to do. And I think that a lot of people associate pawn with, tactical combat players, people who are just like, I move my character here, I attack and make a strike, make a multiple attack penalty, double slash, whatever. But I think that you could be a quote unquote role player and still be a pawn, because what you're really doing, you don't want anything to dictate what you get to do. The person who makes all of your decisions is you for your character. To me, that is pawn-like. That is not actor-like. That to me is pawn-like. And so whether that's moving your character inside of a combat to a flank position and taking a feat because it's awesome, or whether it's because you're like, I want to sit here and pretend that I'm, at the inn and I want to talk. And what's really happening is it's you, the player, just controlling your PC utterly. And that means that they're a pawn. They're doing everything that you want them to do. They're not doing nothing that you don't want them to do. And so they become, this kind of completely autonomous to the player, which arguably makes the pawn movement, right, its own form of metagaming. Because what is happening is I'm going to play my character in whatever way is going to work for me. So I kind of went off on a long rant there, but let me go ahead and read some of the chat here. Again, if you really want to get something across, super chat or drop me a tip, and I will try to get to that. Let's see here. Derek needs to show us on the doll where the actor hurt him. No, actually, in fact, just kind of the opposite. I think that some of my newer favorite role-playing games kind of demand that I act. And they sort of put this emphasis on my character. I can't help myself because I'm always, I've been a GM for so many years. I'm always thinking about other players. I'm thinking about the GM. It's very hard for me not to sort of be, kind of in that director standpoint. But I do think that the actor played correctly is actually very beneficial and fun. But again, I personally believe that when people are more mindful of what the game was, I feel like this rant was about the worst examples of each style. Yes, I mean, I was definitely being negative. There is no doubt about that. Wolfenstein says it's metagaming all the way down. Well, and you know what, Wolfenstein, you're kind of right, because what I'm trying to say is we're playing a game. It's kind of all metagaming, right? Whether it's because you want to be really effective in combat or because you want to talk about the duck soup at the Rusty Dragon Inn, that's you as a player taking your preferences and what you want to see in the game, and you're making it happen inside of the game. So I think that, the question shouldn't be, are you metagaming? Because I think the answer is yes. The question should be, what are you trying to metagame for? What is your objective? Because if you're the character who, my FPT examples are so powerful. Fine. I'm talking with my wife about whether or not we're going to get a divorce. There we go. It's much more dramatic, London. So where was I going with this? Right. So you approve of that one? Okay, great. Okay, good. I mean, a great example of this in FBT sense, right? We've played Legend of the Five Rings where, we've had an extended scene where, a character is trying to determine whether or not, they're going to win a game of Go, or whether they have insulted the innkeeper, or what's the best way to politely sort of excuse themselves because they want to go to bed. But we've also had Legend of the Five Rings games where like people have FBT'd like, am I going to commit seppuku and end my character's life? But what I was going to say is that it comes down, I think, ultimately to motivation. And this it doesn't matter what the metagaming is. It comes down to motivation, right? So what do I mean by motivation? I mean that at the end of the day, when you are making a decision, why are you making that decision? Like, and you really need to kind of like step into this and think about this. Like, if I'm a character who metagames so that I can make better combat decisions, right? My character, when I play my PC, I go, oh, I'm going to move to the flank and I'm going to use my mace because I know that'll make the monster -2 to its AC, and I know that it has a resistance to slashing weapons, or I know that it has a weakness to bludgeoning weapons. I'm going to use my mace. Okay, everyone goes, that's metagaming. But why is what I just described bad? What makes that bad? That's me playing the game. Similarly, if I decide, you know what, my character is afraid of heights. So now I am going to act like my character is afraid of heights. Okay? That is me taking my motivation, my knowledge of what I want into the game, and applying it inside of the reality of the game. Because even if you say, oh yeah, but it's what your PC would do, you're the one who's deciding in most of these D20 games, you're the one who's deciding what your PC wants. There's nothing else written down on your character sheet. Maybe, I guess, alignment, but we're getting rid of that. So there's nothing else that's helping you decide other than what you personally want. But what I get back to is, what is your motivation for metagaming? Why would someone metagame? Is someone, being an awesome, combat monster and building a really, really cool, combative, awesome character so that, everybody can have fun and he's, saving the day. And, when your wizard's in trouble, the fighter's there to bail you out and, so that they're picking up their end of the rope? Or are you doing it because, you want to rub it in other people's faces? You want to, you somehow view it as a competition and you want to make sure that like you do the most damage in the party and you want everybody else to kind of feel bad so that you feel good, right? That's metagaming good and that's metagaming bad. Same thing goes true for, being an actor and playing your character part. Like, are you playing your character in an interesting and fun way? And because that's going to make the game more fun for everybody else at the table. That's, by the way, metagaming. Or are you playing your character the way you want it to because that's, this is the classic, well, that person's just being a dick, right? They get off on being a troll. They get off on being difficult. They like seeing other people have to, kind of the Schadenfreude, like they like seeing people, be like, oh, this sucks and I can't say anything because it's a role-playing game and they're just role-playing really well. Yeah, we often do get into deep philosophical questions here. Like, do we have free will? Yes, our RPG conversations typically go into a pretty deep sense. So I think what you have to think about with metagaming is, it gets back to when we were talking at the beginning, where I think KC said, knowing that trolls are weak to fire and acid is one thing. Reading ahead in the adventure path so that you have some sort of unfair advantage are two very different things, because one of them, I think, is motivated out of bad intentions. Whereas I think the other one is motivated out of good intentions. Look, I give this great example of, we've talked about this before, I think a little downstream. We used to play with a guy, I'm not going to name his name, but we used to play with a guy for many years, and he would often be a cleric. And he was known to cheat. He was known to roll his dice, and he would cheat. But here's the thing. The things that he would cheat on, and by the way, whenever it was like always a major moment and like we would kind of start to call him out on it and be like, okay, so-and-so's rolling. Hey, take a look. everybody's, keep eyes on it so that, just basically be like, kind of like, no, there's no way you could cheat here. Inevitably, this player would always just roll the nuts at that point in time. But I digress. This character, this player would oftentimes cheat. And the way that they would cheat almost every time is on how much they rolled for healing when they were healing somebody else. And I think that the reason why they were cheating, I never talked to him about this, but I think the reason why they were cheating is because it was a clutch moment, do or die, cleric's coming in with the big heal, and that, and you rolled badly. You feel like I think that this player felt like he was letting his party down, And I know it sounds kind of crazy to think about this, but I never really called him out on it because I think his motivation was so pure. Like, he didn't cheat if it was like him, throwing a, damage spell against somebody, or, if I asked him, oh, did you make your, saving throw? Like, he never cheated about that stuff. He cheated about stuff like healing somebody, because I think for him, he didn't want to let the party down. So, I mean, that's obviously an example of cheating, not metagaming, but it's this idea that even things that we kind of view as being pejorative can fall into good motivations, or at least they can come from a good place. Save Versus says, metagaming as a pejorative falls under cheating. Technically, all map combats is metagaming because no one has a bird's eye view in real life, but it's not considered cheating. Well, exactly, Save Versus. I mean, you're really hitting the nail on the head here, which is we, at all points of the game, are struck with the fact that we're playing a game. When you're in combat round is 6 seconds. You have a lot more time than unless your Pathfinder 2 table is getting through an entire combat round in 6 seconds. You have a lot more time than I need to join your Pathfinder 2 group for one. But you as a player, you as a group have a lot more time to talk about what you're going to do and make decisions and go back and forth and probably even have conversations that the enemy somehow isn't a privy to, right? That's all metagaming. It's all metagaming. So, and here's the thing I'm trying to say, though. RPGs are a game. I think it's fine if, and I think when you talk about other, games where it's like, oh yeah, they've read the meta, they're definitely building, they made a sick meta build like in Diablo 4 or Magic the Gathering. It's usually like a sign of, respect. It's a sign of like, hey, they're engaged. They're actually paying attention. They're playing it. I mean, a great example of this is like, if you were playing a adventure path, okay, and I'll give you a great example of this. We're playing Abomination Vaults. Now, I'm not going to do too many spoilers, but Abomination Vaults is a dungeon, and there's a lot of, haunts and undead and ghosts and that kind of stuff. Bob, our favorite, everyone's favorite, Bob made a barbarian, Bob the Barbarian. And for his instinct, he chose the, help me out here. It's supernatural, spiritual. I can't remember what it's called. It's not superstitious. But he chose the supernatural instinct. All right. Thank you. Spirit. Thank you. All right. He chose the spirit instinct, which arguably is not the most powerful one in the game. But when you're playing a game that has a lot of undead and ghosts, doing a couple extra points of positive damage to trigger frequent weaknesses is a pretty nice little boost and bump. Furthermore, Bob is a dwarf. I'll let chat guess. What kind of heritage do you think Bob has? I'm convinced that the chat will get it right. I also just want to drink some of my coffee.
I am strong. Strong.
Ooh. Lazarus Dark, thank you for 8 months of being a subscriber. Thank you so much. He is a tomb hunter or a death warden. Thank you. Death warden dwarf. Now, Death Warden Dwarf, right? For those of you who don't know what a Death Warden Dwarf is, Death Warden Dwarf is basically a member of a dwarven, a heritage of dwarves who have been tomb guardians for centuries. And as a result, you have cultivated a powerful ward against necromancy. If you make a save against the necromancy effect, it becomes a critical success. Guess what? When you're fighting a lot of haunts, undeads, and ghosts, there's a lot of necromancy effects. And lastly, Bob, we're not using free archetype, but Bob has picked up some archetype feats from, which it's in the book, the player's book for Abomination Vaults, which is the Ghost Hunter archetype. So, yes, Bob, in my opinion, by the way, I'm actually going to go out on a limb and say, like, this is like the coolest, best character that Bob has ever made. Because when I see a character making like a character like this, look, they are acknowledging, look, yes, I'm playing a game and there's this player's guide or the GM's giving me information that there's going to be a lot of undead or and haunts and ghosts. And I'm going to build a character that, number one, is going to be effective and be cool and be enjoyable, but also, more importantly, feels, right? This is the beauty of where mechanical-based RPGs like Pathfinder 2 can really take the cake over even other games, because you're making these mechanical choices. They are going to reward you in the game, but they also make your character a natural fit for this adventure. See, if somebody had made a Leshy gunslinger, then the question is, wait, why is your Leshy gunslinger in this adventure?
Honka tips $3. On the metagaming subject, I've had and seen a couple of players who would literally get mad at other players for rolling poorly. It baffled me to no end. It led to a couple of people wanting to fudge.
I mean, look, there could be no doubt, Jonka, thank you for the tip, by the way, that people will like take personal responsibility, right, for their dice, whether they roll badly or not. Like, you just start screaming, like, roll better. You need to roll better. It's like, dude, what are you talking about right now? And yeah, like the pressure to perform is real in role-playing games, because I think deep down inside, I mean, yes, there's probably people who do it from a bad place because they want to be the best and they hate losing or whatever, or looking like a little bitch. But I think most of the time it's because, like, look, we're a team and I don't want to be the one who's letting my team down. I don't want to be the reason why we TPK. I don't want to be the reason why we didn't accomplish our goal. And it's like, that's a very strong, real motivation. So, yeah, so I love this character because, unlike, let's say, a Leshy gunslinger that is really just like, well, it's the character I want to play. This is Bob both acknowledging the mechanical benefits of the game, and it also acknowledges that Bob's character has a fantastic tie-in and a great reason to be in the Abomination Vaults. My character is a dwarf, and the spirits have been angered by this place. He is a spirit barbarian. The ghosts of his ancestors are with him, and they will help him to bring peace and pacify this place where the touch of Nimbaloth has caused so much pain and suffering. And so it's just like, yeah, it's a great mechanical choice, but it's also a really interesting one. It also really ties him well into the game, into the story. And this, to me, is metagaming at its best. We all win. Bob gets to make a great character. The character fits well within the context of the adventure. The player and the PC both want the same thing. Bob wants to go and destroy ghosts and ghouls and goblins. his PC wants to do the same. And that means that Bob and his PC get to kind of go on this fun ride and fun journey together. And that could be really, really rewarding. And, you know, this is where also you get into a fun moment where Bob has a really clear idea of who his character is. It's not just something he made up in his mind. It's mechanically written down on their character. He's got an anathema from being a barbarian. One of the reasons why, you know, alignment arguably could be better as, you know, edicts and anathemas is because it kind of gives you an idea. And again, I don't think that, you know, I'm actually not against, I'm against them putting edicts and anathemas into the ancestries. I think it'd be much more interesting for them just to have a list of them. But then again, you know, that you could just pick from. I think tying them to ancestries is backwards thinking. But yeah, I think it's really interesting because then Bob might get into a point where Bob goes, you know, yeah, I want to leave. But you know what? I think we all know who my PC is. It's like, I think for me, I've heard authors say that, like, when they have really good characters, the character, quote, writes itself. And I, as a role player, really enjoy it when I do feel like my PC is a character unto themselves. And it's my job to portray them because, you know, they're just a piece of paper. They're just an idea. They don't have anybody to bring them to light. It's almost like reverse acting where I'm playing my PC, right? And like, that's a really fun moment. You know, and if you're doing that, but doing that in a way that is aligned with the game and aligned with your fellow players, and you're not just getting so caught up into what would my character do, but instead keeping a mindful eye out about what's going on in the rest of the game, I think that's probably maybe the sweetest spot. You know, going back up to our motivation, maybe it's the case, you know, some of you have said some pretty good things. Maybe the case is that the best place for, you know, subjectively the best, I should say, is somewhere between author and actor, sort of a flow state where you move between the two of these kind of in a cycle, right? And sometimes you're the one and sometimes you're the other, and you're kind of flowing around in a sort of cycle. I think that's probably maybe one of the best ways to maybe play the game. Maybe. All right. Let's see here. Did I see anything else? If anybody said anything really profound or questions, I might have missed it. So, I don't know what Matt was talking about here, but I thought it was an interesting thing. He says, I don't know if you're getting my point, though. I think he's probably talking to somebody else in chat. But I'm saying, though, that I've seen where either the player has an idea or feels like their character would do a thing, but they pull back because of mechanics. Yeah, I mean, that is a classic scenario that, you know, RPGs ultimately limit. And unfortunately, D20 games do a really bad job of rewarding you for doing those type of dumb things. Like, to give you an example, Matt, if we were playing a classic, actually, we were talking about this the other day. They kind of got rid of this. In fact, this is kind of a metagame, right? This is kind of a metagame. In classic Powered by the Apocalypse, so Dungeon World, Apocalypse World, right? Games like that. When you attempt a check, you roll 2d6 plus or minus a stat. And if you get between a 0 to 6, you fail. And I'm putting it in quotation marks because that's a horrible word to use. Doesn't mean failure, but whatever. That's the game. That's the word they use. And you succeed. Cost. And if you get a 10 or higher, you just succeed. But guess what? You also get +1 XP if you fail. And, you know, Dungeon World is a RPG like anything else. You get enough experience points, you level up, you get cool new abilities and make your character more interesting. It's definitely a reason to play the game. But you don't get experience for succeeding. You don't get experience for succeeding with a cost. You get experience points for failing. this creates a metagame incentive for your character to try to do actions that you know that you are bad at. In fact, one could argue that it's almost a little bit of car opping to, when you play Powered by the Apocalypse games, to have a stat that is a -1 to your modifier, because it's like you want to have a stat that sucks so that you have a outlet so that you can hit that to potentially get some bonus experience points. Now, of course, from the narrative perspective, this is creating a really, really interesting and cool outcome, because you're giving the GM the ability to, change and shape the game, because you're quote unquote failing a lot. And so they get to make a bunch of GM moves and hard moves, but you're also racking up a bunch of experience points. Great role playing, Debbie. I can see your things here. Let's see here. You guys are chatting like a storm tonight. So again, if you have like a comment or question, like if you type question in all caps before you type a question, I think that'll, obviously if you give me a tip or a super chat, I'll see that most directly. But if you type question, at least in capital letters before your question, that'll be the best way for me to see something. Hey, Frostjack.
Frostjack tipped $5. The one type of metagaming that grinds my gears is players trying to guess what the GM wants them to do. I want to see how you will react to what's put in front of you, that's all.
You know what, Frostjack, that's a great example. And I think that's actually a good, important point. Metagaming, as I described it, and this is why I kind of revised, I think this is kind of why I went back and revised what I was saying earlier, where, maybe in between actor and author is the best place for being a player. Because if you push too much into director, then you're starting to almost lose player agency, right? I want people to be making fun decisions and choices. And I remember Bob coming to me and saying that playing the adventure paths was very stressful to him. Whereas when we had started to expose Bob to newer types of gaming. So like, so the APs, like Rise of the Rune Lords or whatever, or Quest for the Frozen Flame. To Bob, he said that these were stressful. But he said that the when we played 5e as just a big sandbox game in the Caves of Chaos from B2 Keep on the Borderlands. So we did these kind of sandbox games. When we did some of our more narrative games, Bob said, he didn't feel as stressed, and I should say less stressed. And I asked him why, and he said it's because he was afraid of fucking up the story. He was basically trying to be a director, right? But unsure of what to do and how that would affect the evolving narrative. He was afraid that he was going to, say something stupid or do the wrong thing and send the story off in a bad or, questionable direction. And by the way, you don't need to be playing an AP for that to happen. There's a great map game. Do I have it right here? Oh, yes, I do. So there's this great game. It's called The Quiet Year. And just going to come here real quick. So this is called The Quiet Year. And this game is by Avery Alder. And it's a map making game where you go ahead and draw little maps and stuff like that. And you go around and draw cards and ask you questions. And on a player's turn, when you draw your question, you're the only one who gets to decide what's going on. Like it's just explicitly designed, unless it specifically says that you can discuss it with your group. It's your decision to make. Well, we were playing and we had this really cool it was a community after like a nuclear bomb had gone off, and like the country was sort of post-apocalyptic, and we were this community of survivors, and we were struggling to survive, and we knew that there was like there was like a evil, destructive mutants, Vikings, coming for us come winter, and we had this metal, and we were like, oh, like we need to gather this metal and we need to try to build some sort of perimeter defense and whatever. And then on one character's turn, he got a question, which was like, the community has gathered a great amount of resource. What do you want to do with the resource? And he was like, yeah, I want to build a water slide. And per the rules of the game, he got to make a water slide. Now, this was not an AP, but he still ruined it. So, that's like you don't have to necessarily be playing in an adventure path to quote unquote ruin the game and go off the rails. Even in a sandbox, you can go off the rails. A great example of that is if you're playing a sandbox, but we've established that the game is about dungeon exploration, and the GM's been creating new dungeons or buying new modules and adding them to the world, and there's like an exploration things, and then you're like, hey, you know what I want to spend this session doing is exploring the town and maybe starting up a business. It's like, okay, yeah, no, there's no story that you're ruining, but you're still kind of ruining it because that's not what we said we were going to do, right? Respect the metagame. Look, don't act like you don't know. You know what we're doing here. Don't be an ignorant ass. Respect the other players who came to play this game, and respect, the GM, for having to prepare and run this game session. Dirt was in that game. It was, by the way, it was not Dirt who did this game. Who did that? Yes, it was the best worst game ever until the water slide. Yes, exactly. Dirt was actually part of that game. I actually forgot about that. That was classic. $2 for the water slide. Someone had said something about the weather. So don't start playing Starfinder in the middle of a Pathfinder game. That's one good option. I would definitely recommend that you don't do that. Someone asked me if we're getting tornadoes here. As you said that, I heard this massive bolt of lightning or thunder, I should say, outside of my door. We are currently under a severe thunderstorm watch, which is not the same as a warning. So in theory, it is not too extreme. It's definitely raining. If I lose power, you'll know why. A severe thunderstorm watch is in effect. Prepare to take shelter if necessary. There is a marginal risk of extreme weather. So, all right, we'll keep appraised. Derek, did I hear about this? I don't know. What is this? All right. Normally I don't. Okay. So what Roll for Combat is talking about is apparently that there was this thing about taking 20. Remember, everybody knows the taking 20 video where, he shat on Pathfinder 2nd edition. And he said that it came out that he was basically lying, and that he had like really house ruled the games, and like one of his players or one of his former players who was playing in that game basically came out and said that, yeah, like he kind of ruined the game on purpose to make it like bad and play out bad. Yeah, I mean, I've heard that. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I know a lot of people who make house rules for Pathfinder 2nd edition. I made house rules for Pathfinder 2nd edition. So, I mean, if you don't like the game, you don't like the game. I mean, this idea, part of the problem with this philosophy, I know we're getting off topic here, but part of the problem with this philosophy is people are basically like,
Rick has tipped $15. The A-team never worried about mortgages or medical debt. They just kicked ass every episode.
Thank you, Rick S., for that incredible and awesome super chat. Thank you so much. Appreciate it greatly. Waiting for it to pop up in chat. There we go. Thank you, Rick S., for that. Yeah, listen, the A-team was is a great example of how everyone should play their role-playing games, right? Just keeping on. So Lance Quagmire, by the way, my buddy George, who lives not too far from me, says we're taking level appropriate amounts of rain and lightning. Author plus actor minus asshole. Yeah, George, I kind of like that, George. I kind of like author plus actor minus asshole. That's pretty good. If you want to be, player PC focused, I don't think that there's anything wrong with going to the director standpoint at times. But, especially if the game has a mechanism for doing it, like Fate is classic for doing this. Devil's Bargains from Blades in the Dark are a good example of sort of directorial thing. So Roll for Combat is saying Derek is author plus actor plus asshole. No, that's pretty reasonable. The last thing I want to say about that taking 20 thing is okay, whatever, fine. He changed some rules and didn't like it. Here's the problem I have with people's thought process. People go, taking 20 changed some of the rules of Pathfinder 2nd edition. Then they played it and he didn't like it and he shit talk it. And everyone's like, what? He changed the rules? No wonder he was messing with perfection. If he had just played it the way that the rules were written, he would of course had an amazing time. There's no way that the fact that he didn't enjoy the game had anything to do with the fact that he just didn't enjoy the game. Like, that's part of the problem with it, is like this idea that the problem with the game is that he fucked up jump skill checks for jump or something like that. I was reading about that online. Like, someone's like, oh, he was doing jump checks wrong. Okay. I mean, if that's what's going to ruin your game, I mean, it's crazy. Yeah. All right, fine. Remove the rules, whatever. There's too many of them anyways. I mean, look, I'm not going to try to say, look, I think, if we're going to call a spade, fuck it. Well, I'll go in. Fuck all these people who come out and say something about, Pathfinder 2nd edition or any game system, and basically being like, yeah, and by the way, we've played it like once. We played it twice, I mean, there's a lot of people out there in the internet land who are so-called RPG experts, and they didn't start playing role-playing games till a couple of years ago. Okay? That's all I'm going to say. I don't know what makes you an expert. I've heard it's 10,000 hours. I question how many influencers that are huge have 10,000 hours of role-playing game experience, So, I don't know. Don't listen to Taking 20. Don't listen to anybody. Find yourself someone who is, it knows their shit. Yes, obviously, Steven, you and I have been playing role-playing games for, 30 plus years. So yeah, we've got our 10,000 hours in, but any of these people who come in and I think it's less of a problem with Taking 20, talking to people. It's with the fact that anybody listens to him. Who the fuck cares what that guy says? He doesn't know anything about the game. I mean, there's a lot of people out there who are, and I'm not even bitter about it, by the way, because I don't care. They can get their coin. In fact, hats off to them for getting their coin. I'm just saying, there's a reason why we trust people who are experts and why we don't listen to people who are just, ranting on a soapbox. London, I mean, I would very much doubt that if you went back to Taking 20's video that you would have seen him say something like, this is a completely objective review. What the fuck does that mean? There's no such thing as an objective review. Every review is subjective. That's what it means to be a review. An objective review would be me reading the rule book to you. Yes, I'm not saying that, what he did or how he did it was arguably questionable, but I don't think objective, Matt, that is so accurate. Look, that is an objective. Oh my God, GM Scott. A lot of these people aren't patrons, so they don't know what they are. Smith did we got shit on because we talked shit about certain elements of the Treasure Vault, which, by the way, was a book that we absolutely loved. We just didn't love all of it. And we, said some things about it. And a bunch of people in the community got mad at us. And so Smith made this joke review video of him being like, what do they want us to do? And he was like reviewing this book. And he's like, This is a book. It has a cover with art. There are pages. There are words on the pages. Black hole armor was a clear L, just a clear L. Derek, I am wrong. Take my money. All right. Listen, this page is mostly green. This page is not. This book has 272 pages. It's just like, that's an objective review. Objective video game review is some facts with no commentary analysis. Yeah. Anyways, so I don't necessarily know that I think that, like, look, I don't watch Taking 20. No, I don't have anything against them or whatever. I really don't know him at all besides that video. But I don't think that, again, this self-righteous importance. It's like, he was trying to take Pathfinder 2 down. He was just jealous. It's like, no, he wasn't. Stop. Just listen to yourself. Stop. No, he wasn't. He's like any of those other people out there. He's just making videos because he's got to fucking put something out to get views. All right? That's all. Like anybody else. You want to see a legit channel, find a channel that never publishes videos, like our channel. or does 2-hour long philosophical discussions about what it is, the essential quantity or qualia of playing games. And does the act of playing a game make you automatically a biased observer of your character's game? Right? Get those hundreds of you, which I won't make any money off of because I accidentally played Paramore music at the beginning of this stream. So there you go. Like this is about as straight a shooter as you could possibly get. George says sometimes the story is better when it's a little fucked up. George, I completely agree with you. I completely agree with you. So, I mean, in fact, that's what I look forward to all the time. That when the story takes a fun, hard left turn. KLC has not released a video in 4 months. Well done. And yet we have like, what do we generate? 6, 12, 10, we generate somewhere around like 20 to 30 hours of content a month with the live streams. It's pretty crazy, especially when we do some of those super secret Sunday streams or bonus streams. Like it's crazy how much some people are very dedicated fans, and I am very, very thankful for you. What else we got here going on? I'm just going to hop away from our whiteboard here for a minute. I'm sorry, Isaiah, the chill stream beats will be back at the end of the stream. Listen, no, it wasn't accidentally on Paramore. Paramore was what I was listening to last on my Spotify. When I started the stream, I pushed play on my Spotify and I didn't realize that it was on Paramore and not on the Epidemic Sound royalty-free sound list that I'm allowed to play. I'm not against 13th Age being on the front page of the channel's video tab, but even that 13th Age, Sean, was just a clip from one of our live streams. So yeah, your time is not completely wasted, Isaiah. Yes. Well, Paladin, I'm happy to have you here. I'm glad that hopefully you're doing well. Congrats, by the way. I think I don't exactly remember how long you said you've been cigarette free, but congrats on that. It's tough stuff. I know I'm over here trying to make some life changes myself. 25 days. Awesome. That's fantastic. Congrats on that. But yeah, I wanted to work out 6 days a week. I've kind of been working out 2.5 days a week. So I'm a little under where I want to be, but I'm at least making, I'm making some progress towards the towards the goal. Great role playing Debbie says, could you please release the whiteboards you make? I think those could be imported and could be interesting. Yeah, you know what? I'll make those available. I'll make those available on the Patreon. That's a cool idea. I like that idea. I mean, most of it's just my scribbles, but at this point, 6 days a week. What am I? 19 years old? Well, abuelo, a couple things. Number one, I have a gym in my house. So me going to the gym is really just me turning a corner, and I've got my rack, my power rack set up, and my cable station set up. So that's number one. And then number two, for me, it's about doing upper body or like sort of a push, pull, and a leg split. And I do that so that I hit each muscle group twice a week. So it's like if I do pushing on Monday, then I'll do pushing on Thursday, and et cetera, et cetera. But it's not a very intense workout. I'm not doing, I'm not doing any bicep curls. I'm not doing any tricep extensions. I'm not doing all of like the, hundreds and hundreds of reps. It's like get in there, do a big heavy body lift, and then get out. Like that's the objective. I did not see your comment about tribalism. Fandom tribalism is the dumbest fucking thing humans came up with just to be angry about it. Yeah. I mean, I think it's just the essential nature of fandom, though. People want to, it's not enough that I like what I like. You need to like it too. Like, I get that people get very mad at me when I tell them that like their favorite class, I gave it a D rating, and they're like, how could you? I don't know. I guess I don't like the class. Like, I'm not trying to say that you can't play it. I'm not even trying to say that you don't enjoy it, but it's like in their mind, me saying it's bad is me telling them that they're bad, that they are an idiot for, liking something, or, it's kind of silly. But yeah, we have all sorts of fun, notebooks that we've sketched out over the last, couple months. There's a zebra wrangler. Wow. That one's old. I don't even know what this one was. Jeez. This one's taking a while to load. Oh, this was from my gym stream. That's actually me talking about my push pull leg split. Anyways, we'll make. I'm going to go through and I'm going to find some of these. I'm going to find the stream that they belong to, and then I'll sort of link the, these images into something that the patrons can get a hold of. I think that's a cool idea. I really like that. What was this? Oh, this is where we were discussing the GNS scores of Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder, along with our greatness and complexity scores. Well, greatness is an aggregate of GNS, and complexity was sort of a negative modifier. Listen, the Zebra Wrangler will come. Great role-playing Debbie. It will come. There will be in Northern Reaches. I will make it happen. Melissa, thank you for the $5. Says, KLC brought me in because it has the right amount of snark to not be just fanboys. I like real talk. Yeah, listen, we like a little bit of snark. I mean, I'm cynical. There's no doubt about that. I may even be jaded at times, but at the end of the day, I am a huge fan. I'm a massive fan. I mean, why would I do this? Why does people who make the anybody who's a member of our Patreon knows that we spend entirely too much money on this YouTube channel. I can honestly say that we've made no money. I mean, I am definitely super negative. I've been doing this for almost 3 years, and I've had a very successful patron with incredibly supportive patrons, and wonderful audience members who tip and support us. And we have just put every single one of those dollars just right back into the channel. Buying, again, I just spent this month, I spent almost $2,500 to buy dice, shirts, stickers, and an undisclosed prize that we're going to be, using as part of our patron rewards and patron support gifts. Again, trust me, $2,500. I don't make $2,500 a month off of this Patreon. And you're like, oh, yeah, you probably do. Yeah, but also remember I have a studio that costs $1,000 a month and insurance for that studio, and I have to have high-speed internet for that studio. And, oh, I also just spent $1,000 on more lights the other day. So, anyways, point is, yeah, we are snarky, but we're pure. We love it. Let's see here. I have not owned a console either. The last console I owned, I bought a PS4, but I never played it. So does that count? I bought one. I bought PS4 and I bought Final Fantasy 16, 17. I don't know. The one where people drive around in cars. And I never opened it. It's still in the shrink wrap. I plugged the PlayStation in and I've used it to play Blu-rays. That's about it. Yeah, we're totally off topic now, kid. I mean, it's a blame roll for combat. All right. That's the one. The boy band travel group. All right, let's try to finish this up. Let's try to wrap this up. Maybe we'll end up wrap it up early tonight. Metagaming. I think people need to take a long, hard look at why they think metagaming is bad. And I think if you did that, you'll realize that a lot of times when people are metagaming, they're actually engaging with the game. They want to be good at it. They want to play the game well. And I think under that, that core motivation, I don't think it's as bad of a thing as people have led it to believe. I believe it is a cultural bias that comes from the idea of the days of the 70s and the 80s, where the idea that if you were metagaming, it meant that you were somehow cheating. But I don't think that's the case anymore. And I really wonder how, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but we've talked about before, like in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, like what does your character know? You don't know. You have to make a recall knowledge check to know what your character knows. So how would your character ever make a decision about anything? Like, how much information how stupid do you think your PC is? Especially if they're an adventurer. And I don't know. I mean, I think people get so obsessed with this idea that they want to role play well. And I mean that like in the critical role sense, where they call it role playing, that they think that bringing anything of the game into their playing of the game is somehow making them not a good role player. That's not what Matt Mercer would do. That's not what Laura Bailey would do. And I think that's just wrong. Also, that's just not the type of game that most people play. It's just not the type of game that people play. Zach, worth going into the table talk during combat question? Some people seem to hate it. I love it. I love it too. I mean, I'll say this, Zach. I mean, again, we all have to respect the table social contract. Gameplay needs to go around quickly. And I don't want everybody's turn to turn into a, tactical discussion decision breakdown. And as a game master, I will push and snap the group to keep making decisions. But the idea that I wouldn't let my players strategize and talk to each other and that is what makes that game fun. That is what makes the game enjoyable. I will admit that you need to make sure that you don't have a dominant player at your table. This is like when you play with a co-op game like Pandemic or something, where you don't make sure that you have, some player who's just telling other people what to do. Oh, do this so that you could do that. I mean, it's fine to suggest. And if you look, actually, if you go back at some of our early Rise of the Rune Lords, and I actually had people comment about this and said that they really liked it. Like a lot of times as a GM, my players would ask me, hey, what do you think I should do? And I will always, even as a fellow player, like if we're playing and Bob is playing, Aaron's GMing, I'm playing, Bob's playing, and Bob says, Derek, what do you think I should do? I will always give him 2 or 3 options. Now, one of those is what I would do and what I think is the best option. But I might say, well, Bob, it seems like he's kind of low on hit points. You could throw a magic, high level magic missile at him. That might finish him off. But at the same time, we're not really quite sure. So, it might not work. You could drop a true target spell, giving us all a massive bonus to attack him over the next, round. Or your character could throw an AoE spell like a fireball or a chain lightning to try to deal with not only that threat, but also some of the other secondary threats that we haven't engaged yet. I think all three of those are fine options. And then you know what? I might have what Derek, would personally do, but I can just step aside from that and say, you asked me for advice. I gave you three options. I think they're all valid options. Sure, one's the best, but I'm not going to tell you that. And you can make the call, and it'll ultimately, at the end of the day, still be your decision. Abuelo says, what happens when the GM metagames? I call that good GMing, Abuelo, for sure. Metagaming, having Archives of Nethys open in another tab while playing Pathfinder online. It depends what you're looking up, Tim. I mean, I'm very, it's like, if your encounter is boring because somebody could look up your monster, then I'm sorry to tell you this. No, that's not the problem. The problem is that your encounter sucked. That is, I think, a piss poor excuse for, that element of the game. And you know what? I'm going to go a step further and say real talk. I think that recall knowledge was never really meant to do any of the things that any of us are doing with it. And I think that Paizo knew that. I believe fully and foremost that recall knowledge was never supposed to be able to figure out what a creature's resistances or statistics are, or any of that stuff. Any of the stuff that people do with recall knowledge. I actually don't think that that's what they intended it to do. I think recall knowledge was intended to just be, the player saying, I don't know, so I'll use my PC to see if they know. Right. Abuelo, the answer to that is no. I mean, the answer is straight up is no. There's probably some crazy ass GM out there who's done that, but the answer 99 times out of 100 is no. Save Versus coming in with another super chat. As a GM, is it considered metagaming if you keep some monsters around 2 rounds after they were dropped to 0 hit points to keep it interesting? Yes, but I also consider that cheating. So I think that's you've pushed too far. Save Versus, right? Your motivation was, I want this to be exciting and interesting. So you make certain decisions. That's within your purview. But if you go too far, then what you're starting to do is cheat. And when you cheat, you are removing the character's agency. And I am a firm believer that a player's agency trumps almost everything in the game. It is the one sort of sacrosanct thing that I do not want to trample on as much as I possibly can. So, so yes, it is metagaming, but it's past the point of metagaming to cheating. So, for example, if someone makes a really strong PC because they don't want to let their party down and they want to make sure that they can kick ass and take names in the upcoming adventure, that's metagaming and that's positive. But if you're like, oh, I really want to kick ass and take names and I want to make sure I build the perfect PC, so I bought the adventure, I read through it, and I know every single challenge and every single encounter, I'm going to build a PC that's specifically designed to be able to combat everything. I'll have a backup scroll for that encounter, I'll have this potion for the water part, and I'll have everything perfect and ready to go. That way, I'll never let my group down. Okay, motivation, okay, still good, but now you're cheating, and that's just a bad thing. Yeah. So, Isaiah says, I think motivation for the metagaming is important for a GM. And I agree with this because, I take the rules, the agenda, of Dungeon World of Powered by the Apocalypse games, I really should say, but, I take the agenda for that very, very seriously. And, here we go. Is this it? Is it where we were? Nope. Which one were we? There we go. Gotta find it. So in Powered by the Apocalypse games, right? We've discussed this before, but the GM agenda is to make the world fantastic to fill the PC's lives with danger and excitement and adventure. And lastly, third, play to find out what happens. So this last one, right, this play to find out what happens, right, that speaks very much to the player agency part of it. All right, I should not have a decision made about what's going to happen or how it's going to happen. And so that is us honoring this play to find out. But this second point here, right, this one right here, okay, what's going on? I don't know why this is not doing anything. Okay, this second point right here, this to me is GM metagaming. Because I'm saying, like, look, we're sitting down. Again, this is assuming you're playing a standard heroic fantasy game, which Dungeon World is, and most games are. I have a bias, right? I have a bias as the game master. If I have to make several decisions, I'm going to choose the one that's going to fill the PC's lives with danger and excitement, right? That is, as a GM, to me, now I know this is, again, these are the GM agendas of Dungeon World, but I argue that this is kind of the, GM agenda for most people. I won't say everybody, but again, I think that this is the GM's version of metagaming, because you are essentially being biased in the decisions you make, because you're leaning towards making things exciting and fun and dangerous and full of adventure, or whatever the tropes of your particular game are. If we were playing Call of Cthulhu, I would expect this to say, fill the PC's lives with, horror and mystery, right? And so given a choice, whenever I'm given the choice between this option, which is really going to ratchet up the horror and mystery, and this option, which is going to be fairly mundane and boring, I'm going to choose the option that is horrific and mysterious, because I'm playing Call of Cthulhu. But if I'm playing a fantasy adventure game, then yeah, I want to fill my characters' lives with danger and excitement and adventure. So yeah, I think the GMs can definitely be a metagaming themselves. I think the GM equivalent of metagaming is fudging, whether soft or hard. So, Frostcheck, that's an important question. That's a great point. I think it's worth talking about. To me, fudging is cheating on playing to find out. If I'm honoring playing to find out, then I'm not fudging. Fudging is the very opposite of playing to find out. So I think that's kind of where that's kind of the safety net for that. Yeah, be a fan of the PCs. Now, being a fan of the PCs isn't the same thing as wanting them to all survive, right? Like, that doesn't necessarily mean that I have to rig things so that they always win. Again, to me, you know what, Save Versus, actually? I'm not a fan of the PCs. I'm a fan of the players. I kind of, for the PCs, I'm trying to fill their lives with danger and excitement, right? The PCs may not love that, right? But the players will. And ultimately, at the end of the day, the people that I'm worried about aren't the fucking PCs. It's the players, right? I think we've all experienced this, right? We've had sessions where you crushed it, everyone gained experience, you maybe even leveled up, and, you sit back and you go, that was a terrible session. That was a boring session. Or maybe it was actively not a fun session. Maybe you were playing with a pickup group or a Pathfinder Society group. Maybe you're playing with your home group, but you're like, yep, that was horrible. But you've also probably had sessions where it's like, yep, we TPK'd, and everyone's like, it was the greatest session of all time. Now, obviously, that was not a great session for your PCs, but it was a fantastic session for the players. So, you know, I think that is kind of the distinction that I would make there. Let's see here. I thought I saw something. All right. Great role-playing. Debbie had to bounce. That's fine. We're going to be ending up here shortly here. I'm not even sure that the CR crew is nearly as concerned about metagaming as a lot of people in the community. I don't think they are either, Frostjack. Actually, I don't think they are at all. I think that the CR crew is very, very firmly located in this authorial, directorial space. And I think they are mostly just interested with doing things that are going to make a good show and make it fun for them, make it fun. If it's fun for them, it'll be fun for the audience. And they're interested in making the most interesting choices rather than necessarily, staying true to any sort of reality of their character. Let's see here. I'm not going to name names, but one of my community game members is listening to the live play of the AP I'm running. Yeah, I mean, I don't even necessarily know that that's a problem. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I have played through adventures before with players who've played that adventure with me before, and we both loved it. We played through it, and guess what? It was still awesome, and it was still fun. And if anything, the player almost had a better appreciation for the adventure. So, I mean, obviously there's a level of maturity that comes in with that, but yeah, I mean, I think that I don't even think that's necessarily the worst thing in the world. Gid says, I look at this GM agenda list and it makes me feel like I'm a horrible GM. Well, sorry, Gid. At the very least, Gid, it just means, it's not, you're not a game master that I would want to play in. Maybe you have a style that works for you and for your group and for your players and for people who appreciate it. And that's awesome too. I mean, we have a lot of room for variety and stuff in the spectrum. So I'm all the way back at Bob's Dwarf, but I don't think this is metagaming. Metagaming is when a character acts on player knowledge, but not when a player makes a decision on how to build a character. I'm arguing, Beowulf, and you'll probably get here later. It's all metagaming. I mean, it is. People try to paint it, and but I mean, a pig with lipstick is still a pig, And I don't necessarily know that that's a bad thing. I don't think that it's metagaming to do that. In fact, actually, going all the way back, again, I can't, and this is what we said in the very first metagaming video that we did 2 years ago. I kind of respect it when people know the game. When I meet someone who's like really good at Pathfinder 2nd Edition, they know how the game works and they know how to make strong decisions and they have a good feel for monsters and whether something has a good reflex or they're aware of some strange, obscure bit of knowledge about a monster. That doesn't make me go, oh, what a cheater. I go, respect. This person knows their stuff. Like, I like it. I don't know. Again, that's my own bias there, but I like it. Let's see. Speaking of Critical Role, I think Travis is the most important cast member. He is awesome at role-playing and solves puzzles well, but most importantly, he is everyone's hype man. He is everyone else's biggest fan. I don't watch enough Critical Role to say that one way or the other, but, I think all the cast members are pretty cool. My gut instinct is that Ashley Johnson is the one that I probably like the least. Would be my guess, and maybe Marisha, but I think the other woman, Laura, I think she's amazing. Sam Riegel also kind of bothers me. He's just too annoying. He's just a twerpy guy, and I don't like him. But anyways, I guess that's like half of the crew. But I think Matt's great. I think Travis is cool. I think Laura Bailey's cool. I think Talsleen or whatever. I think they're pretty cool. Is that everybody in Critical Role? Did I miss somebody? Again, Ashley, no. Marisha, not so much. And Sam, not so much. Liam. Which one's Liam? Oh, Liam. Yeah, no, Liam's fine. Liam, I think, is like a legit good player. Like, not like in the, he's a good player because he role plays well. No, like Liam seems to actually know how the game works, and crush it. And I respect that from him. So I mean, I didn't mean to go off on a Critical Role thing here, but yeah. So, let's see. Yeah, I mean, I would ideally like neither of those, KC, but you're absolutely right. I would definitely rather a character show up and be like, look, I'm invested. I want to be a part of this game. And I want to put, like, I'm playing the game. I'm playing the game to play the game. Let me play the game. Let me make decisions that, like, you know, this isn't acting, like, it's not acting class. It's a game. Let me play it. And so I think that when people try to get too concerned or too worried about metagaming, you're playing, it's a role-playing game. And it's like people have this idea now that role-playing games are this crazy, weird version of acting. And that's just so far from the truth that I can't even begin to describe it. A player at our table was trying to metagame, but was misremembering the rules. I was torn. Do I point out their mistakes so they could do a better job of metagaming? What to do? I would point out their mistake. Yeah. Do you want them to get better at the game? If the answer is yes, then I would say, you know, you should point that out. And you could say, you're like, that's a good idea, but flanking doesn't work that way. If you really want to flank, you would need to move to this location. Right? Because the problem isn't that your player isn't trying to engage. Your problem is that the player needs to be instructed. And that's what you do as a GM, right? Your job isn't to be this, again, like I said, you know, fill the PC's lives with danger and excitement, but be a fan of your players. Don't be a fan of the PCs. Like, I want my players to have a good time. I want my players to, you know, do cool things and hit and succeed. And like, yes, I want to give them a hell of a time doing it, but like, I'm not trying to like pull one over on them and fuck them over because it's like, oh, you guys didn't know how the game works. I don't know. I give the farm away a lot. Like, I think this obsession with secrecy in the game masters it's born. I mean, it's 2023, people. And you know me, I'm an old school fan. I like Gary Gygax. I like first edition. But I think that people are fucking stuck in the past. Even people who started playing within the last 5 or 10 years, whether they know it or not, are victims of this mentality, which has shifted and changed. I don't even play with a dungeon master screen. I mean, unless I need the tables and charts, which a lot of times I don't, once I know how the game works, what do I have to hide? I don't have to hide anything. What are we doing here? Like, there's this idea that has been born out of, like, I don't care if a player wants, if player sees, like, I've got the adventure open, they see a map or something like that, I'll show the players the art for a monster at the table, which is like right next to their stats. Yeah, I don't care. Who cares? Like, the more your players know, the more they're going to be engaged, the better decisions they're going to make. The better decisions they make, the more they're going to get amped up and pumped up because they're going to feel like what I do matters. I think metagaming in that sense increases player engagement and involvement and ultimately agency. And like I said, for me personally, player agency is way more important than any sort of, you know, how realistic are you portraying your character? Or, you know, have you really done a good job of you know, building an accurate, an optimal character that's going to be able to handle the appropriate severe and extreme encounters somebody throwing at you? All that shit doesn't matter to me. What I want to know is the player engaged? Are they getting to make decisions that are full of agency? If they are, I think all the rest just kind of takes care of itself. And win or lose, they'll have a good time. Let's see. You know, here's the I've started giving the farm away a lot too, says Zach. Really ramped up since I joined KLLC. And again, that works for me. Maybe it doesn't work for your group. I also am the first to admit I do not enjoy, read, or watch mysteries. And I know that some people play games that are mystery based. There are some systems that are mystery based. We had a whole thing about this. I was very against them. The chat and the patrons were able to sort of rightfully convince me that I was wrong. And I acknowledge that. I still said it wasn't for me. But I understand there are players who, if you just told them who the murderer was, would be like, well, dude, that you kind of ruined, you like spoil, like as an example, you can't spoil a movie for me. If I haven't seen a movie yet and somebody tells me how it ends, that almost never ruins the movie for me. In fact, in some cases, it makes the movie more enjoyable for me because now I get to watch the movie and I get to see how all the pieces are fitting together to get to that ending. So I'm not saying like I want to be spoiled, but when I am, I'm not even that upset about it because if anything, sometimes it makes the movie going experience more fun for me. So how about that? Gid. Question. What do you really think about New Dawn? It is full of actors and is arguably not a game. What do I think of New Dawn? What I think about New Dawn is the same way that I feel about MMOs, like World of Warcraft and EverQuest. And in those games, there were typically servers that were designated, at least World of Warcraft did this, that were designated role play servers. Nothing else changed. The game was the same game, but there was an implication that if you were on a role playing server, that your character was going to essentially speak in character. And a lot of people turned it into sort of Second Life, right? Where you would just kind of walk around with your avatar and you could, some people got really weird with it. Aaron tells me that this happens in the Final Fantasy Online as well, where people essentially are just living a virtual life. That has always been very unappealing to me. That being said, so humdrum slice of life. That being said, I do enjoy collaborative storytelling games. I like games like Microscope, and I like games like Fiasco. But those are not actor-based. In fact, I would argue that Microscope, you are almost entirely in the directorial role at all times. There's no game master in Microscope, by the way. Your only goal is to there's not even mechanics. You're just establishing things and telling stories. But you're doing so from the motivation of what would make this story, interesting or feral or dramatic or, what would be like the next cool logical thing that would progress from this and how, throw a twist in or really follow up on something, pay off something that was set up earlier. And the same thing's true with Fiasco. But the idea of like, if you're an actor, but you don't have any authorial or directorial motivation, then what are you doing? You're playing in a fantasy world, but if the PC's lives aren't filled with danger and excitement, what are they filled with? The mundane and the boring, the safe and the safe and the secure. That's where I'm like, it kind of makes me raise a question. I mean, that just sounds a lot like to me, like, I don't know, like me going to work. So, Tim, I think the game as a Second Life is common among people whose lives are unsatisfying, minorities especially, tons of LGBTQ players. Absolutely. I mean, I'll be the first to admit that, Tim. I think there's a lot of people. I mean, as an example, my roommate, who is my ex-girlfriend, is disabled, and she loves The Sims. And why does she love The Sims? Because she gets to play out all these fun scenarios and do all these cool things that maybe she can't do in real life. And that's a very fun way for her to express herself and to be a part of that. I don't hate on that, but I also don't really consider The Sims a game. It's just kind of like an activity. We get together and we, shoot the shit. I mean, I'll give you a great example. Legend of the Five Rings, you earn experience points per hour played. It doesn't even matter what you do. You could show up to a Legend of the Five Rings game and just bullshit for 5 hours and you would get 5 experience points. Or you could go and, win a courtly intrigue and survive a duel and then fight a mass combat of armies. And if you played for 5 hours, you're going to get 5 experience points. So arguably Legend of the Five Rings is just, hey, we could just sit here and talk and that we would get 5 experience points, which would be fine. And honestly, probably the way that most samurais' lives were, even in real life, was they're probably pretty boring and pretty pedestrian most of the days. But this is a role-playing game, and Legend of the Five Rings is a role-playing game, and I have an agenda, which is I want to fill my PC samurai's lives with danger and excitement. So I am going to push scenarios and set up situations that I'm going to play to find out what they do. But what are they doing? They're making important decisions that are going to potentially affect them, the lives and outcomes of all the people around them. So Save Versus, $10. Thank you so much. That is a very, very generous set of super chats you've had there tonight, my friend. Okay, sorry. P1 Metagames. P1. What is P1? Pathfinder 1? P1. What is PL? What is P1? Sorry. P1 Metagames doesn't break rules, but optimizes. Other players don't, so there's a gap in efficiency. If you meet... Oh, player 1. Got it. Sorry. Okay. I'm dumb. Player 1 Metagames doesn't break the rules, but optimizes. Okay. Other players don't, so there's a gap in efficiency. If you meet player 1's challenge, the others suffer. If you match the other players, P1 suffers. Solutions? Well, I have 2 solutions for you. Number 1, Pathfinder 2. The math is tight. And while optimization is possible in Pathfinder 2, the delta, the gap between a horrible character and a great character is pretty small because they've really limited what you can do. I mean, if someone comes in and they're making a melee fighter and they start with a 14 strength, okay, you need to step in. Don't do anybody disservices here. Give them the 18 strength, okay? Make sure that they're wearing armor that's going to get their AC as close to 5 points of item plus dex or 6 if they're in heavy armor as possible. If you do those 2 things, for the most part, and you teach them the basic rules of the game over time, hey, this is how flanking works, like that, you've done it. Like, yes, there are more optimized characters than that who can make some pretty big cheesy builds, even in Pathfinder 2. But even then, compared to like the days of Pathfinder 1 or D&D 5th edition, it is really, really not that big of a delta. If a character has a good strength and takes their strength bonuses and I'm a super optimizer and you're just a guy who just likes to show up and play and whatever, and you level up, at level 15, he and I will have the same attack bonus. So and that is, at the end of the day, like what your bonus is kind of really what matters the most in Pathfinder 2. So I would say number 1, Pathfinder 2 is a great system because it is very, very balanced. And it's hard to really break the core math of the game. You can do some stuff where you can get a little bit more efficient and maybe eke out some small percentages and advantages, no doubt. But in terms of like the raw math, you're kind of stuck. Number 2 is it depends what they're optimizing for. I don't necessarily always buy into this idea that every character needs to be good at everything at all times. We're playing Legend of the Five Rings. We have one character who is an Akodo general, a veteran of countless battles, who's sort of been pulled out of quasi-retirement in order to serve his lord again. And he's got a lot of points in being badass with swords and pole arms and stuff like that. And then we have 2 characters who are courtiers. They're politicians. They're negotiators. They're bureaucrats. They can't fight really well, but they're very good at talking and reading the room and influencing people and all this other stuff. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I can't throw a combat at the party because some people will suck at it. It's like, again, not to go back to Dungeon World, but one of the Dungeon World's moves is one of the Dungeon World's GM moves is show the PCs the downside of their class. So if a player is optimized for one thing, then it's fine to show them the downside of their class. You challenge them with things that aren't necessarily what they optimized for. And I think that's what makes it really interesting. Alternatively, Isaiah's right, which is just, maybe they're just not a good fit for your group, which is also possible. I also think Tim is right, which is to say, look, even, it doesn't have, doesn't have to be like, we're all adults here. Just have adult conversations with people. And if they can't have an adult conversation with you, then you shouldn't want to be playing any game with them ever anyways. So, sit down, talk to people, say like, hey, I mean, what am I supposed to do? Tell somebody that they need to make a worse character? Like, that probably is not needed, right? Probably not appropriate. So it's like, just don't tell them like, hey, listen, okay, your character is really, really strong. Maybe we don't take all those free archetypes and make your character super powerful. And if they have a big hissy fit about it, be like, look, I can't play with babies. I can't GM and babysit at the same time. You got to go. Also, Matt makes a great point. He says, actually, have they complained? Because it's possible the group doesn't actually mind. Yeah, that's absolutely right, Mike. Matt, sometimes I find that, some players don't want to be the best or equal. They're fine kind of being a wallflower, or they're kind of fine being a support character. They're kind of fine being the person who's in the background. They don't need to be at even Steven at all times. I will say that Pathfinder 2 is sort of designed around that idea because, they were designing Pathfinder 2 with, the GM advice and complaints of years of Pathfinder 1 and from people from Pathfinder Society, where it's like everybody is trying to be that, choose me. Everybody wants to be the special snowflake at a Pathfinder Society game, right? I'm being a bit presumptuous here, but like the idea is that they were like, we can't let anybody outshine anybody else because that wouldn't be fair or balanced. But not everybody cares about that. Derek, we need to sit down and have a conversation about your channel. We're all adults here. This is 100% true. Yeah, I like playing support characters. Honestly, I really do. I mean, like, especially like when we used to play MMOs, I would almost always be like a healer or like an enchanter or a mesmer. Like I loved being a shaman. I loved being like the background character. I love being support. I'm at my happiest most of the time when I played a wizard in one of Smith's, or I think it was 3E. It was before 3.5. It might have been 3rd edition. Yeah, it was 3rd edition. I would wizard, and I would just basically like cast buffs on the party and debuffs on the enemy. I very rarely ever threw a fireball or a lightning bolt. Sometimes I did just to make a point, but I was totally fine being support. I liked it. Isaiah is confirming that PFS is filled with car op assholes. Okay. All right. Fair enough. I am trying to get my player to metagame to use their swashbuckler abilities. Yeah. I mean, listen, if somebody, again, I think even some of these Pathfinder 2 classes are designed around people saying like, hey, like you need to metagame a little bit in order for this game to work. Like Pathfinder was expecting that you were going to actually play and engage in the game. Right. Frostjack. I always tell people you should have 2 priorities when you're a player at the table. The first is make sure that everybody else around you is, including the game master, is having a good time. And the second thing you should do is look to yourself and make sure you're also having a good time. But if you're doing that and everyone else around the table is doing it, there's going to be 4 or 5 people around you who are going to be going out of their conscious way to sort of make sure that you are having a good time. But also too, just in case, don't be afraid to speak up and be an advocate for yourself sometimes. I think those are both important. And, remembering that is totally fine. Commander, aka the Warlord, in 13th Age is having a blast. No doubt, because the Warlord, honestly, is like the single greatest class of all time. And the Commander is sort of the spiritual successor to the Warlord. So makes total sense, Sean. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Booth B, metagaming bit me in the butt the other day. There's no way it's a Froghemoth. It's too high level for this dungeon. It had the weak template. Womp, 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 womp. You gotta love it. If anything, I actually like that a lot because it's like, that's you going like, oh, you know what? Sometimes I had to learn something today. Like you got to sometimes be prepared for some of those unexpected monsters because of the weak template or something else that could change its level or something like that. And it's like, you're becoming a better player. You're learning how to play the game better. So I love it. City of Heroes controller, best superhero. I had a blaster in City of Heroes, but in City of Villains, I had like a very buff-based mastermind, I think is what the class was called. And that was pretty fun. Not to mention I had, all sorts of cool robots, which was pretty sweet. I mean, that's hands down is the best. I don't know how balanced it was or if it was good or not. I never got like super into like being actually optimal in City of Heroes, City of Villains, but there's no doubt to me the City of Villains Mastermind is like the coolest MMO class that has ever existed. Roll for Combat is hijacking my channel. Do you all want Derek to design an island or two for our upcoming World of Battle Zoo Indigo Isles books? Say yes, peer pressure. I'm being recruited live. I don't know if you want my island in your book, Stephen. Here is the island of no fun. Here is the island where all of the fun ancestries went to die. All right, well, we're getting some very positive vibes here. There, now see, this man's thinking. Outsource the Northern Beaches. Strangely, it's a lot like the Northern Reaches. It's just now, turns out the Northern Reaches was in Indigo Isles the whole time. That'd be funny. Steven had sort of mentioned that to me, and I thought it sounded like a pretty cool idea. And, I'm a big fan of Roll for Combat, big fan of Mark Seifter over there as well. And, if they want me to reach out and, design something and kick the tires on something, I'm happy to do it. So it'd be pretty sweet. We got a Kickstarter link here. World of Battle Zoo Indigo Isles. So I don't think it's launched yet. I can design anything I want. Yes, the Isle of Humans. The Southern Reaches. Oh, Matt, I love it. I love it. It'll be over-the-top fantasy with things like waterfalls flowing upwards to floating cities. I don't know that it would be that Galarian in depth, but man, that sounds pretty sweet. That sounds like a cool world full of adventure and fantasy that I would want to go to, as opposed to a world that is boring and dreary and not exciting at all. So, yeah. Steven, do we have a launch date for this Kickstarter yet? Let's see. All right, Rain Hunter. We're going to be signing off here shortly. Mid-July. Okay, sounds good. So don't you worry about it, Rain Hunter. Probably July 18th. Oh, July 18th? You mean the day that the root game starts? Bum, bum, bum. Northern Reaches versus Tropical Beaches. I love it. I've always thought of a world would be clouds that travel and reverse gravity instead of drop rain on people. Well, that's certainly very interesting. I like fantastic stuff. I mean, in my fantasy games. Speaking of world building, did you see my post in the KLZ content forum? I took a very quick look at it and I made a note to check back on it later, John, but I believe your concept was that we build a collaborative world together as sort of like the KOLC official world, I think was kind of what you suggested. I didn't really get into the details of it, but that's kind of what I got the gist of it. No, it is not August 22. It is July 18th. Oh yes, Isaiah, they want my brand recognition. Anyone can back an island idea, and the best will be added to the book and written by Mark Seifter. Seriously, so there you go. You get to be lazy too, because you can just pitch him an idea, and then Mark will make it into a reality. At Matt, we did try to have some naval combat in season 1 of Northern Reaches. Somebody found a naval combat book on what's it called? Pathfinder Nexus or whatever, the Vault, whatever it's called. The thing through Drive-Thru RPG. Someone bought naval rules for combat, and it was pretty not great. But is the Legend of the Five Rings game streamed? Beowulf, it is not streamed. That is our personal home game. Would you like to see a Legend of the Five Rings game? Actually, Beowulf, I mean, again, it's 9:20, so I'm going to be signing off of that. Part of the problem with me streaming Legend of the Five Rings game is, and you can see this, by the way, if you look at Legend of the Five Rings, which was created by Fantasy Flight Games, now Edge Studios, and you look at Adventures in Rokugan, which is Rokugan, that's the world, the Emerald Empire of Legend of the Five Rings. They made their own game system. It's traditionally always had its own game system. And now it has a system that uses a bunch of proprietary dice. It's very much not D20. Well, they made a 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons version of Rokugan. They called it Adventures in Rokugan. And it's obviously using the D&D rules, strength, dex, int, con, wisdom, charisma. And it's, Rokugan is almost always just humans. Adventures in Rokugan, you can be a bunch of different weird, crazy races. So it's like D&D, but in Rokugan. But the other thing about it is that the Adventures in Rokugan is very, very, very whitewashed. It talks about how like suicide and honored killings and killing yourself over honor is a bad thing, and we shouldn't promote it. And Adventures in Rokugan doesn't talk about like the caste system and how foreigners and peasants are treated like scum, and how like there's a certain category of people that you can kill and you don't suffer any consequences for it because they're viewed as little more than animals, right? Rokugan has a lot of historical depth to it, and we like that, and we would play that. And I wonder if it would like get us canceled, is basically what it comes down to. So I would be my concern about playing Legend of the Five Rings. Yes, Damien, Nezumi have been in the game since the very beginning, which is why when they're written about in the Crab book, it talks about how no one knows of their existence except for a small handful of people in the Crab. Yes. Like if you're playing Legend of the Five Rings and you have like a big ass Nezumi party, you're doing it wrong. Technically, so have the Naga, Damian Williams. So is trolls and Kitsune. I'm not debating that these creatures don't exist. What I am saying is that for the most part, during the foundation of the Empire, the kami, the so-called gods and heroes of the Empire, went on a genocidal rampage and wiped out and or killed almost all of these creatures. So, anyways. Actually, we have Derek, DM Lair, and Bob World Builder so far making islands. Who is bringing the thunder? Well, listen, I mean, Bob World Builder has World Builder in his name. How can I compete against that? That's all right, Claude. You can always catch the VOD. Appreciate you coming in here late as it is. All right, well, we're gonna wrap up. So, we kind of got all over the place here this last 45 minutes, but thank you again for everybody for supporting and coming out and throwing us some super chats and throwing us some tips. It's extremely appreciated. Again, the goal tonight was 6 and 9. So you guys went above and beyond as always do. And, very, very appreciative of all of you. As a reminder, next week, Tuesday, we're going to be doing a stream from the studio with Bob and Aaron. We're not really sure what we're going to be doing, but we're going to be doing something from the studio, maybe a class, almost more of like a very relaxed, almost like the days of the podcast, if you remember the podcast. So it's going to be like a podcast live we're going to, probably do some interacting with the chat, but it's mostly, I think, going to be us kind of having a conversation. Then we're going to Origins. We're going to be joined by Mr. Glicker from Roll for Combat, along with Bob, Aaron, and I. We're going to be all heading down to Columbus. And our plan, assuming we can overcome the technical hurdle, is we're going to go live Thursday from Origins. So, is this the revival of the KLLC Spotify account? Not quite yet, John. Not like it really matters because we never really made any money. But part of the thing is like Spotify canceled our ad revenue because we didn't get enough listens or views. So they stopped giving us ads, which meant that we stopped making money off of it. So like putting it up there literally made us $0. And that was kind of like a kick in the balls. So we kind of just like stopped doing it. I don't hate the idea of the podcast. I actually really like the idea of the audio format. I'm thinking we'll do something like that in the future, John. I know that Aaron and I, along with Ben, have talked about going and doing a podcast where we go back to the very first issue of Dragon Magazine and sort of spend, 20 to 30 minutes. So more short form podcasts, but like 20 to 30 minutes, just covering an issue, talking about what we thought was interesting or what we liked. So that's one idea that I had, but yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens with the studio. Yeah, I think that'd be awesome too. So, I mean, again, I'm always kind of trying to keep my eye open because, especially podcasting is nice because it's very low effort. It's live streaming and podcasting probably about the same amount of effort. Really, just turn on I don't have to worry about cameras. I don't have to worry about the lights. Podcasting, it's like just sit down with your, get people good microphones, get them in front of them, and it's going to be pretty great. Yeah, I think that's going to do it. So I just want to say thank you to everybody for being a fan and hanging out with me tonight. And we'll see you next week back at the studio. And we'll hopefully see you next week at Origins. We're going to be doing some live streams, or we're going to have some patrons there. So if you're in the area in Origins, stop on by, say hello, say hi. Introduce yourselves. Let's talk. Let's chat. We're there to play games, and the more the merrier. And we're hoping to do some podcasts or live streams with some of our patrons and get them in on the fun and just kind of shoot the shit and have a good time and remember what gaming is all about, which is having connections with your fellow human beings. And I, for one, am really looking forward to that. All right, everybody. I think that's going to do it for me. So on behalf of the Knights and behalf of the patrons of the Knights of Last Call, I just want to say thank you for everything that you've done. And we will see you next week on Knights of Last Call. Bye, everybody.
I'm in the business of misery. Let's take it from the top. She's got a body like an hourglass, it's ticking like a clock. It's a matter of time before we all run out. When I thought he was mine, she caught him by the mouth. I waited a long month, she finally set me free. I told him I could